Welcome back to Mystic Fix. Now let's meet author J. Allen Cross, who wrote The Witch's Guide to the Paranormal, How to Investigate, Communicate, and Clear Spirits. Welcome, J. Allen Cross.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Hi, Jay is a practicing folk witch and paranormal investigator. He serves as psychic medium and occult specialist on a well-known investigative team out of the Portland metro area. That's Portland, Oregon, right?
Yes.
Okay. He enjoys working as a consultant for other teams and spiritual workers, exploring haunted and abandoned places and writing about the paranormal. And that last point is really why you're here, because you have this incredible book, The Witch's Guide to the Paranormal, How to Investigate, Communicate, and Clear Spirits, with Llewellyn Publishers. So I think first off, I have to ask you, why the witch's guide? Why not the average person?
See, something that I found in my writing career is that I really, for some reason, have this need to just take two very different worlds that people don't think go together and then just smash them together, or I guess build a bridge between them with a book. And I find that we as witches, we spend a lot of time working with energy. We spend a lot of time working with spirits. We spend a lot of time working with getting comfortable in kind of some of the darker, scarier places as well. And when we do paranormal investigation, I think the biggest thing that's lacking is being able to interact in a way where we can influence spirits, but also to help them and to do something with the hauntings, which is more of a spiritual aspect of paranormal investigation, which we don't often see. We often see people try to approach it from a very scientific place, which I think has its benefits. But at the end of the day, what I was seeing was a lot of paranormal investigation teams were coming in and being like, with a family that needs help, and they just come and they like snap a bunch of pictures and are like, cool, have a great time, and then leave. But I think that witches have this enormous toolkit to be able to come in, not only communicate with the spirits that are happening there, but also then do something to help, whether that's crossing over a spirit that might be stuck here and needs help, or maybe getting rid of something that is a harmful spirit in the home, or whatever it is. I think that we have so much to offer in paranormal investigation in a way that hasn't happened yet.
I mean, I think we're all familiar with all those Discovery Channel ghost hunters shows, and it's more about how cool it is to catch it on, their EVPs and their meters and their whatever. But you're right. It doesn't really address the spiritual, or not usually. What's your story? How did you get into this?
Oh, wow. So I actually started doing this work when I was in high school. I was about 15 or 16 years old. I'm from a very small town in Northeast Oregon. And my mom had kind of been doing some work as an animal communicator. She's a pet psychic. And so, it was still a time, and it was still a place in which we kind of kept what we do under wraps a little bit, but in a small town, stuff goes around pretty quickly. So my mom was, helping people, like escorting them to like put an animal down so that she could kind of communicate with them through the process, things like that. And so people started coming to her and being like, well, you're psychic. I have a haunted house. Can you come and check it out? And she was like, I don't do that. However, my son speaks to dead people. So maybe you want to go talk to him. And so I'm like 15, 16, going to people's businesses, going to their houses, opening their closets and seeing what's living in there. And that's kind of how it started. So I did that work on my own for about 6-7 years, and then I joined a paranormal investigation team in Portland, Oregon, and have been with them for the better part of the last decade. So I've kind of done it both solo and as a team.
Yeah. Have you ever been scared?
Oh yeah, yes.
Tell us about one of those.
Oh gosh, I have had I always tell people that the truth is always stranger than fiction. So my very first case that I ever really worked on was in my aunt's basement. And that's where I met what I kind of refer to as the spider girl. there was the spirit of this young girl, perfectly normal young girl, who was down there, and we kind of pieced together, was trapped down there because in life, when she was, with us, her, I guess, parental figure would lock her down there as means of punishment for extended periods of time. And so she kind of ended up trapped down there. And when we went to go kind of see if we could get her to be freed, we found that she had made friends with the local spider population in that basement. And that basement had a kind of an infestation of wolf spiders. And I don't know if you've ever seen a wolf spider, but these are big spiders.
Yeah, I've seen them.
And so I'm like crawling through, like there was, the way we found her was there was kind of like the basement proper, and then there was a hole in the wall that I crawled through. There was like this little narrow corridor that I went down into kind of another space that was underneath the house that was not in any way like finished. It was literally underneath the house. And I found her in there in the back corner. And I kind of see her on the other side, and I have a flashlight, and she's kind of curled into a ball, kind of like with her head on her knees. And she's crying. And so I'm like, okay, I'm going to go over there and I'm going to talk to her and see if I can help her. And I get over and I kind of squat down in front of her. I'm giving her space, and I've put the flashlight down at this point, but there's still kind of like enough light that I can kind of see where she is. And I'm trying to talk with her. And I reach out my hand to kind of see if I can kind of maybe make some gentle contact and like say like, hey, it's going to be okay. And that's when I realized that I should have kind of kept the flashlight beam trained on her, because what I didn't notice is that the spiders had spun this big, dense webbing around where she was to try and protect her and comfort her. And so I reach out my hand, and it goes into like this big spongy like thing that they've created. And I am not a fan of spiders myself. It's one of those things that like you kind of like, okay, like I'm here for a higher purpose, so I'm going to deal with it. I'm just going to muscle through. But at that point is when I was like, no, thank you. I ended up like hightailing it out of there, going back to kind of the main part of the basement where my aunt was. And we end up kind of trying to talk her out of this back area. And as she comes, we feel her kind of come down that corridor. But before she comes all the way out, we kind of feel her stop, and we kind of feel her sort of contemplating. And then out of the hole in the wall crawls the biggest wolf spider we have seen yet, crawls out of it as if though to see if it was safe for her. And what we ended up doing was we ended up trapping it in a jar and taking it upstairs and showing it like outside. And it was this beautiful spring day. It was safe. Then we take it back down, and then we re-released it into the hole. And after like a moment, you could almost feel her like having a little chat with the spider. Then when he was like, it seems to be okay, she was like, great, and then immediately left and was released, which was my first kind of experience with releasing a trapped spirit. But also that was also the first time I've ran into a spider that was sort of acting as an ambassador for a spirit.
Yeah. Do you think that's always the case, like with trapped spirits, that they're in a painful place from their life, from their actual physical life?
Not always. I do think that that's one of the reasons, but I run into, all spirits are people, so everyone's going to have their own personal reasons for it. But some of the ones that I come into the most commonly are either they don't know that they're dead. So sometimes when people die really suddenly, like getting hit by a bus or something like that, they don't know that they've died. They just kind of keep going. And then other times too, it's things like they want to wait for a loved one. Before they cross over, they're like, oh, I'm waiting for my spouse, or I want to watch over the grandchildren, or whatever it is. They don't realize that they can cross over and still do that from the other side. And sometimes too, people like being a ghost. They think it's fun, and so they avoid it, or they think that there's some sort of punishment, that they're trying to avoid as well. So,
do you believe in bad spirits, like super negative entities?
Oh yes. It's hard for me to label them as bad, because in my experience, I've found that all things have a purpose. However, that doesn't mean that they can't be harmful. So for instance, from the perspective of a fly, the spider is evil. It's not something
Sure.
that you like, but also spiders got to eat. So a lot of the times when I find negative entities in homes that are, scaring people, harming people, causing people to be sick, whatever it is, when I find these entities, it's not because they're there to cause chaos and disruption. It's because that's their purpose, is they feed on fear. And so they show up and find a place to prey upon and create fear, because that's what they feed on. So it's not so much a good and evil thing so much as it is just a predator prey thing more of the time.
Yeah. Well, so getting back to your book here, do you have any tools or techniques you would offer to aspiring investigators?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, the whole book is pretty much around that, but some things that I find are most helpful is always having a really open mind, because again, the truth is stranger than fiction. You're going to run into things that you didn't even think was possible when it comes to how time and space and things like that work with the paranormal. Sometimes those rules are not always as can be. So an open mind is really important. I think that people can do a lot more with pendulum dowsing than they think. So I always encourage people to work with that. And my number one kind of tip for anyone who is a new paranormal investigator is my personal motto, which is paranormal starts with P, as in use the little investigator's room before the investigation starts, because you don't want anything jumping out of a closet at you and you having an issue. So paranormal starts with P.
That is hilarious. Regarding clearing spirits, do you have any practical tips for unwanted energies?
Yes. When it comes to clearing things out, I think number one, the most important thing to do is correctly identify what it is that you're clearing out. Because the different types of hauntings, whether they're like a human earthbound spirit, or if it's like a residual haunting, which is just like a memory or an entity or something like that, they're all going to need to be fixed a different way. So for instance, you can't send a poltergeist into the light, because a poltergeist is not a spirit. It's something that's created by a person who's
Right.
going through something. So you can't just like send it into the light and have it go. You have to actually, that person might need some counseling. Or, you can't send a memory into the light either, the way that you would a human spirit. So if we correctly identify what it is, then we'll know how to fix it. So it really starts with identification.
Okay. You address the subject of ethics and responsibilities with working with the spirit world. I have always felt watching these TV shows that it crosses a line into a kind of insensitivity, if not outright exploitation. And I just thought maybe you want to speak to that.
Absolutely. Something that's always been really dear to my heart is just having respect for the spirits, because a lot of these spirits are people that just simply don't have a body. And I find that me just going into a place and getting evidence is not helpful. It's not moving the needle. It's not changing anything. And so to go in there and be terrible and provoke these spirits and really disrespect them for views on YouTube or whatever it is, I don't feel like is really changing anything in a positive way. So I think it's really important to approach paranormal investigation from a how can I help direction, because a lot of the times too, when you team up with the spirits, you'll get even better evidence too, if that's what you're looking for, than if you're just there to harass them. And as well, if you're being disrespectful to them, you may end up getting more than you bargained for. Sometimes I have people message me, they're like, when I was a teenager, I broke into this mausoleum to try and, get, evidence and, views or whatever. And now the spirit has been with me for the last 15 years and I can't get rid of it.
Oh my
And
gosh.
I'm like, maybe you shouldn't have done that.
Yeah. Do
So
you ever do cleansings? Like, I guess some people, the most extreme would be an exorcism, but like for an individual, beyond a space, like when an individual does carry a negative spirit, can you handle
yes.
that?
I have done that on several occasions. I do go over my methods for that in the book as well,
Okay.
where I talk about removing a spirit from a person, because that does happen. It happens more often than people would think. And so again, it comes down to correctly identifying it. And then once you do, there are ways of kind of removing it from the person. Sometimes it can be very jarring for people to like have that encounter where they do pick up a spirit that then stays with them. But also I find the psychology of that is a little interesting as well, because one of the main things about any sort of clearing, whether it's a person or a space, is whether or not the person actually wants the spirits to be gone.
Oh,
Because sometimes you can do all the work to clear it, and then the person either for one reason or another wants it back. And sometimes even if the spirit is something that's been very harmful for them or something they haven't really liked, if it's something that's been with you for the past 15, 20, I've had people tell me 30 years before, they don't know what to do with that empty space, and in some ways kind of end up missing it when it leaves.
that's so interesting. I'm a professional tarot card reader, and I had a
Mm.
client once who was being kind of tormented. Um, I would probably, I mean, by no means a doctor, but I probably would have labeled him schizophrenic.
Mhm.
But for all the torment, he said he didn't want to lose it. He wanted that connection, that he felt he was a prophet. He felt he was able to do magical things with the assistants. And it's like, wow, that's a big cost at the expense
Yes.
of your own freedom. Yeah. Well, Jay, it has been a pleasure. How can listeners or viewers reach you if they want to learn more about you or connect?
Absolutely. So I am on social media at the moment. My social media is set to private because I have a lot of people attempting to pretend to be me on Instagram right
Oh,
now.
yeah.
But you could find me at Oregon_wood_witch. I'm also OregonWoodWitch@gmail.com. If you want to send me an email, that's a great way to reach me. And of course, my books are found everywhere that you find books, whether it's on Amazon or directly from the publisher, wherever it is you want to buy them, that's great. Definitely feel free to leave a review too if you do.
All right. And I'd just like to close out saying Llewellyn Publishers is giving a free copy of your book to one of our listeners. So really excited about that. J. Ellen Cross, it's been a pleasure, and hope to talk to you again sometime.
Thank you for having me on.
That was author J. Ellen Cross, who wrote The Witch's Guide to the Paranormal, How to Investigate, Communicate, and Clear Spirits. Stay with us for part 3 of Mystic Fix when I read some tarot cards.